Good morning, everybody. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got gas, a morning edition on this Thursday or Wednesday or whatever day it is. I've lost track of time, but that's okay. You haven't. You're watching. Thanks for being a gasaholic and joining in. Gas, the Great American Auto Scene since 1990, your source for automotive information, some humor, and sarcasm. I do that a lot. But today I'm going to talk about something that seems to be disappearing in our lives. Manual transmissions in cars. That's right. There's only a few cars left that still have a manual transmission. But before we talk about that, let's talk about why the manual transmission has gone away. Now, the reason? Automatic transmissions. Now, there's CVT, that's constant velocity transmission, which is a belt drive system that sucks. And then there's the automatic transmission with multiple gears. Some as many as 8 speeds, I'm told, in some Chrysler products and Ford products and such. Manual transmissions, well, they've been around since the beginning of time in one way, shape, or form with automobiles. But the automatic transmission, who many think didn't come out until the 50s, actually was invented in the 1920s. Yes, it was a 4-speed automatic transmission. It was developed by a Canadian steam engineer. Why? I have no idea, but he did. It was 4 speeds, it had no reverse, and no parking position. Now, the parking position really isn't that big a deal to an extent. After all, Chryslers didn't have it until the 60s. Even in the 50s, there was no park position on their push-button automatic transmission. But when did an automatic transmission start taking hold? Well, you got to go back to World War II. Chrysler, working on the tanks of the time, found out that there were some people that couldn't drive a stick real well, and they kept stalling them. They came out with a semi-automatic transmission, or a semi-stick, depending on how you look at it. It was a manual transmission with a torque converter and a clutch. Now, the clutch was used to shift gears and to put it in gear initially, but there was a torque converter that kept the power from going to the transmission until the RPMs came up and you had a fluid coupling. Chrysler called it fluid drive when they came out with it in cars. My 1949 Dodge had it. They called it gyromatic drive. My mother's 53 Plymouth had it. They called it fluid drive because basically that's what it was. It was a 3-speed manual transmission hooked up to a torque converter with a manual clutch. Now, it's a simple situation, but it didn't take hold because it was too much monkey motion. You had to shift, and you could run around town in second gear. When you got on the freeway, you had to put it in third. If you really wanted to accelerate, you started out in first gear, but you really didn't have to because the torque converter, that's what made it magic. And it did work, and it did work quite well, and it was pretty reliable. There was very few moving parts other than manual transmission and a clutch. But that wasn't really an automatic transmission. The first true automatic transmission, well, it's credited with the 1949 Cadillac. Yeah, that's right, Cadillac of all cars. And then Oldsmobile had one too. Well, heck, it was Generous Motors. They had it almost across the board, except for Chevrolet. That's right, Chevy didn't get that until the Power Glide. Now, the first automatic transmissions GM used were 4-speed hydromatics. They called it a turbo hydro, or a hydromatic transmission. Now, it came out, it's 4-speed. It was the basis for a lot of modified cars, too, because B&M, well, they started modifying these hydromatics, and you had a hydro stick. This sometimes is what they called it. Morning, Bob. How you doing? Well, that's what we did. We went to automatic transmissions. Now, manual transmissions stayed in favor. They were less expensive, for one thing, and you had more car control. So people with the know that aren't just drag racers, and I'll get into that in just a second, stuck with manual transmissions. Why? Better control in corners, better control on acceleration, better control in slowing down, better control in icy or wet conditions. It's just better control. Now, I know the automatic transmission guys are going to say, oh, no, that's not true. Well, no, it's still a fact. It's still true. Because with an automatic transmission, you still got a certain amount of power going to that transmission. Whether your foot's on the brake or on the gas, you still have power going to it because the torque converter is still somewhat tightening up and locking up and starting to flow that fluid. And you got a fluid coupling. That's what that thing, yeah. Now I'm starting to sound like someone else I know. Oh, never mind. Anyway, the torque converter. But with a manual transmission, you push in the clutch, There's no mechanical connection between the engine's RPM, engine speed, and the transmission. You can bring the RPMs up all you want. Car ain't going to go if the clutch is pushed in. But an automatic transmission has taken hold. Why? Well, my belief is people are inherently lazy. They don't want to shift. That's too much thought to put behind it. And because of that, many of the youth of today, and even some of the older people, do not know how to drive a manual transmission. If they did, they'd find out how much fun it is. My wife took my car out just a few weeks ago and came back saying, I forgot to remember how much fun driving a manual transmission is. And they are fun. And I enjoy it. My daily driver is a manual transmission. And for the most part, unless I had a vehicle a company vehicle that I had that had automatic transmissions, my daily drivers have all been manual transmissions. 3-speed, 4-speed, 5-speed, even a couple of 6-speeds mixed in there. Chrysler. Yeah, had a Chrysler little sports car. Yeah, it had a 6-speed manual transmission. Now, had the same one with an automatic transmission too, and it was boring. Had a Corvette, 6-speed. Had a few with automatics too. Prefer the 6-speed. Prefer the manual transmission. But then again, as much as I'm into drag racing, for drag racing, I prefer an automatic. For the street, I prefer a manual transmission. And when I raced manual transmission cars. And that was not drag racing. I actually had to turn right and left. So the manual transmission helped quite a bit. Did I ever blow a transmission? Oh, yeah. My 1960 Ford Falcon, I tore that transmission apart. Of course, the rear end went first. The transmission followed. But let's go into some of this. So the history I just told you about, hydromatic transmission, automatic transmission. General Motors engineer Earl Thompson developed and advertised the hydromatic as the greatest advancement since the self-starter. Yeah, well, so much for that idea. However, it did stick, and a lot of people have it now. Most cars are made with that. So what do you do if you're like me and you want a manual transmission, but you got to buy a new car? What do you look for? Well, I'm going to go over some of the cars that are still available today that have manual transmissions. The Subaru WRX Impreza. That's a cool little car. All-wheel drive, turbocharged, boxer 4-cylinder. Man, those things get up and go. You wouldn't want an automatic transmission on that car because you can't control it as well. Yes, I know, it's got a turbo. Well, try and bring the RPMs up on an automatic transmission without having it creep forward quite a bit or having to fight the torque converter. Well, you don't get the boost up unless you have RPM. And with an automatic transmission, you're pretty much limited on bringing the boost up on a street car. Now, race cars are different. Let's just stick this to street. The next vehicle you can get with a manual transmission is the Ford Mustang. Now, whether it's a 4-cylinder V8, you can get a 6-speed manual transmission, and if you go for the Mach 1 or one of the higher performance cars, you get a really good 6-speed transmission. So the base transmission's a good one. The optional transmission coming in the Shelby GT350 and the Mach 1, it is an even better 6-speed manual transmission from Tremec. The 2023 Camaro still got a manual transmission in that car. On the ZL1, a 6.2-liter supercharged engine, that makes it fun. You got some boost there you can play with. So the manual transmission is still alive in limited numbers, though, with the Camaro. Now, Chevrolet is dropping the gas-powered Camaros. Oh, sacrilege. And they're going to make them all electric. Now, with an electric vehicle, you don't have a transmission because when you're not on the throttle, there's no motion. There's no need for a transmission. It's direct drive from the motors. The 23 Honda Civic. Now, there's various models of the Honda Civic, including the Boy Racer version, and they do come with a manual transmission if you can find it. And that's the other issue. Because of the popularity of the automatic transmission and the laziness of the average driver, finding the manual transmission may be a little difficult, and the dealers actually don't want them on the lot because most people are buying the automatics. 2023 Mazda 3 still has a manual transmission. It's a fun, sporty car to compete against the Honda Civic Little Boy Racer SI model. 2023 Subaru BRZ Toyota GR86. Now, this is the sports car. It's a joint venture between Subaru and Toyota. It's rear drive, has the boxer engine in the front, 2-liter, not Well, they got a little bit more than 2 liters now. They bumped it up a bit, but not the turbocharged engine. It's still a fun car to drive. They are excellent handling cars, and for fun, they still have a manual transmission in them. You'll like it. I've driven one. I really like it. They are cool machines. 2023 Ford Bronco. Yeah, off-road vehicle. Well, it can be an off-road vehicle. Most of them will never see off-road, except maybe a dirt driveway someplace, but they've got them. And Mike, Movie Mike, I'm getting there. Haven't gotten that far yet. But you can only get the manual transmission on the EcoBoost. So that's the turbocharged version. You can get the manual transmission, but most of the people for off-roaders are going to use the automatic because it's easier. Yeah, it is, for rock climbing and stuff like that. The Kia Forte. Now, this is a little sports sedan, again, geared to go after the Honda. Yeah, it's the Honda Mazda Challenger. And it does quite a good job. It's front-wheel drive, as the other two are, and it does come with a manual transmission and 201 turbocharged horsepower to get you moving. The 2023 Nissan Versa. Now, I'm just talking about 2023 cars now, because these are the vehicles that are left with manual transmissions. Hi, Red Vincent. How are you? So the Nissan Versa, their entry-level car, again, geared against that Honda guys. Now, if you don't like the manual transmission, you can get their CVT as an alternate. It's cheaper. Well, not much, but I've driven cars with CVT. My wife had a car with a CVT. That's a constant velocity transmission. It is basically a simple automatic transmission, belt-driven inside metal belt, and it's a pain in the butt. No fun at all. The 2023 Jeep Wrangler and Jeep Gladiator. Yeah, doing some off-roading? You can get a manual transmission on the Jeep, but for who knows how long. As you know, they're switching over to electric. Stellantis, the company that owns the Chrysler Corporation and Jeep, is dumping the gasoline-powered vehicles shortly. The V8 goes away next year. And, well, you can still get a manual transmission, still have fun. 2023 Toyota Tacoma. Yeah, they still got a manual transmission in their TRD, the Turd edition. The TRD, actually, is Toyota Racing Division, but, you know, TRD, Turd. It's not the first, it's not the second, it's the Turd. Anyway, you can still get a manual transmission in the Toyota truck. The Porsche 718 Boxster and the 718 Cayman. All right, Porsche's still got their head in the game. Manual transmission sports car. What's better than that? Now, this is a car that made to carve corners. You want a manual transmission. Automatic transmissions just don't work the same, and they're a little bit more difficult to navigate around a corner. The new Z car. 4 liters worth of Z. It continues on. Since 1969 year, 1970 model, the Z car has been a fun sports car, a GT. Manual transmissions have always been the way to go with these cars, although they did come out with automatic transmissions because, again, the average person buying one was buying an image, and they don't really know how to drive a manual transmission. They're lazy. Hi, Robin. How are you doing this morning? So the Z is still available with that. The Mini Cooper, the Cooper Clubman, the Mini Cooper Convertible, the Mini Cooper Hardtop. They still got a manual transmission. It's an option. It's not the standard. You can get an automatic transmission as well, but, man, it's a Mini. They're fun to drive. They carve corners. You want a manual transmission. BMW 3 Series and the M4s. BMW keeping the manual transmission alive in those cars. Why? Because the buyers of those cars still are younger and enthusiastic about driving, in most cases. Some are still buying an image, and when they buy an image, they go for the automatic translation. 2023 Dodge Charger, but not the supercharged version. You can get a manual transmission on the RT only, and that's a 375 horsepower Hemi, not the supercharged. Now, you can choose the Challenger RT, the Scat Pack, or the RT Scat Pack wide body, both which make 485 horsepower. You can still get a manual transmission. It's fun. But you can't get it on the 700 plus horsepower supercharged cars. So don't even think about it. All right, Mike, here we go. Cadillacs. The CT4V, the Blackwing, the Cadillac CT5V Blackwing. These are performance sedans from the people at Cadillac. Now, what they haven't told you is the CTSV was a dominating force in IMSA road racing. Yes, the International Motorsports Association, their sedan class, the Cadillac CTS-V, was a dominant force. LS series engine, chassis coming out of Australia, the Australian Holden. That chassis was shared with the G8 Pontiac, the Chevy SS. Shorter wheelbase was the Camaro and the GTO. This was an excellent chassis, and with the manual transmission, very flexible, very usable. But the new chassis used on the Cadillacs, no longer the Australian version, it's a US version. It's a smaller car, same chassis on the Camaro. So to add to that, it made it easy. Let's put the Cadillac with the stick, and they did. And you've got performance-oriented Cadillacs that at the drag strip, man, are cutting some lights and running some times. Of course, most of the guys that come out to the drag strip run an automatic. Why? No, I'm not saying they're lazy, but it's a lot easier to do an automatic at the drag strip than a manual transmission. The 2023 Porsche 911. This car dates back to the early 1960s. 1963, I believe, was the first year of the 911. And it always had a manual transmission standard. Now, later on, they came up with automatics. Why? Again, people are lazy. They're buying an image. They're not buying a driver's car. Moving on. The Acura Integra is back. And it does come with an automatic, manual transmission and automatic transmission. It's more of an image vehicle, but it is also the sister car to the little Honda Civic. A little more horsepower, a little bit more style, but still gets the same transmissions, so you can get the manual transmission in that. The Toyota GR Supra. Now, this is a car joint venture with BMW, and it's based on the BMW Z4 series sports cars. Excellent car. Two-stage turbocharger, and now available with a manual transmission. When they first came out, only an automatic transmission. And the guys that come to the drags, none of them are using manuals. They're all using automatics. So it was okay. Again, people buying an image and, again, don't know how to properly drive a manual transmission. So they bought the automatics. But now Toyota's seen the error of their ways, and they added the manual transmission a year or so ago, and it is still alive and well. The Volkswagen Jetta GLI. A little sports sedan, trying to be. It's kind of mundane looking, but it is still available with a manual transmission. Volkswagen, though, threatening to go all electric in just a few years. So manual transmissions will go away. There is no manual transmission on an electric vehicle. 2023 Golf, the GTI, and the Golf R spec. These are performance sport hatchbacks, and they do come with a manual transmission, of course. For those people that want the image but don't want to bother shifting for yourself, there is an automatic transmission as an option. The MX-5, better known as the Miata. Yeah, it's a manual transmission car. Of course, there is an automatic option because, again, there are some people that buy these cars that don't want to shift for themselves. They're buying an image. They really don't know how to drive, and it shows when we see them on the road. But manual transmission's still there. Subaru Crosstrek. Now, this is kind of an SUV sports sedan, and it does come with a manual transmission from Subaru. So they keep it alive and keep the fun in those cars. So those are the cars I'm aware of that remain manual transmission optioned cars. Hi, Steve. How you doing this morning? So take a look at it. If you're into a new car and you want to get something that's fun to drive, you're not looking for just a piece of utilitarian, getting from point A to point B only, and you want to have some fun along the way, I recommend a manual transmission. Kind of a funny story. I took my car to the car wash a few weeks ago, which I don't normally do. I normally wash it myself, but I was kind of lazy that day. I pulled in line. The kid came out to get it and go in, and he looks at it, and he's bewildered. The driver's door is still open. I look at him. I go, "What's the problem?" He says, "Well, there's 3 pedals, and I only have 2 feet." Moving right along, I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got GAAS, the Great American Auto Scene, coming to you live or recorded, depending on when you're watching this. Hey, like and share, please. Go to my YouTube page as well. This will be on there in just a little bit. You'll be able to watch it. It'll also be on Anchor FM, Apple, and a host of other sites in just a little while. Check it out. Please like and share. Please let people know I'm out there. And, in the next few weeks, I got some special information and an announcement to make about Randy Kerdoon and myself, and we are going to be having some fun, and you're invited. All right, you take care, folks. I'm Hot Rod Bob. You've got gas, the Great American Auto Scene. Have a great day.